B1 family, I wanted to jump right into this one. Speaking about Tim Walz, this is not going to be a regular scheduled broadcast, my usual at 6:30, 7:30 time frame, or neither would be my regular commentary. I just want to kind of jump right into this one and have more of a freelance conversation. And this is most going to be about Tim Walz, who he is, what he is, very briefly, but most importantly, his policies or the lack thereof. That is left up to you. You are the judge. Now, we are familiar that Kamala Harris quite recently made Tim Walz her running mate. Tim Walz would be her VP. Tim Walz is a white 60-year-old man, and he's now the governor, or he is the governor of Minnesota. And if I'm not mistaken, Tim Walz, if we see right here, family, is the 41st governor of Minnesota since 2019 and the Democratic Party's nominee for vice president in the 2024 U.S. House of Representatives. What's important about this, or what's staggering about this, usually when you're running for president, you usually pick a governor or a senator from a battleground state. Minnesota is usually blue. Minnesota is usually Democratic. And Tim Walz is what, 20 years younger than Joe Biden at the 60 years of age. And he seems to be a little bit shorter, a little more balder, and a little more heavier than Joe Biden, but nonetheless, an old white man. Okay. And that's not saying anything to his character. So let's get into some of the legislation that I think most people will want to hear, because identity politics have been taken over for the past 2 or 3 weeks, where everybody's simply trying to galvanize the vote. And it's usually coming from the Divine Nine, the Boule. And I'm not stating all of them. I have brothers and sisters in those frats and sororities. That doesn't mean all of them are on board. There's a lot of them that are essentially not voting or voting for Donald Trump and the MAGA crowd, which, again, you do what you want to do with your vote. That's your prerogative. That is what you want to do. But we should not be voting for someone, whether they're Black, Indian, Jamaican, never the case. We should not be voting for someone simply because of their ethnic, simply because of their race, simply because of their identity. Now, we know that she's been on this cost plan campaign, Kamala Harris, that's what I'm talking about. And why I say that, family, is, have you noticed the only politicians that come to the Black family and serve us collard greens that they washed in the tub? Meg Thee Stallion on stage twerking, renaming the WAP as Woman as President. All these very degenerate, derogatory, disgusting, disrespectful things. But when they go to the Asian community, when they go to the white community, when they go to the Hispanic community, they come with tangibles. They don't come with identity politics. They don't come with symbolism. They don't come with empty gestures. They understand that Barack Obama became president of these United States for one reason and one reason only, because he was a Black man. He wasn't a foundational Black American. His roots did not stem from Black American culture, from the descendants of slavery. A lot of people, especially in the Black community, unfortunately, voted for Barack Obama simply because he was a Black man. And that's very unfortunate. That's very unfortunate, because as we can tell, family, Barack Obama didn't make any specific policies for foundational Black Americans, aka U.S. freemen, aka descendants of slaves from these U.S. lands. And here we are again. We're questioning someone's identity. We're questioning someone's race. We're questioning someone's ethnic, and it really does not matter. What matter is the policies that will be in place, or the lack of policies that will not be in place, that will either support, benefit, or protect Black Americans, which we've never gotten of any president. These are the things that we need to be worried about. They're going to have people out here buck dancing. They're going to have Democratic shields. They're going to have a bunch of people on board trying to convince Black people that Donald Trump is racist, which we know, just as well as Joe Biden. And that is going to be the turning point. They're using the same tactics that they've always been using ever since Lyndon B. Johnson. They're using fear mongering and fear tactics just to scare you away from Donald Trump. And I'm not telling you to vote for Donald Trump, okay? I'm not telling you to vote for neither one of the two. If nothing, here's the thing. If you're hungry and someone invites you to dinner and there's no food at the table for you, but everyone else is eating, are you just going to sit at the table and salivate and look at other people eat? Or are you going to get the hell up and leave and not participate? See, we've been on this stage, we've been on this frontier where we just continue to go out and vote for people based on fear or their identity and or both. And that is the problem. So let's get into Tim Walz. You know, he's the governor again of Minnesota. And I want to point out some of his legislation that he actually got passed there in Minnesota. So we're going to go down some things. So I think this is important. For some people, this is boring because this is not about excitement. This is not about entertainment. This is about the truth. This is about the fact. This is about how this is going to benefit you. Police Accountability and Reform Bill 2020. This bill included measures like banning chokeholds and establishing an advisory council for community input on policing. That particular legislation got passed. When what some people are going to state is that, oh, that disproportionately helps Black folk. No, it helps everyone. Again, there's no policy that I see so far, and I don't want to let the cat out the bag, family. Okay, we're gonna talk the truth here. Number 2, Minnesota Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women Task Force. So they created a task force to prosecute and look for Indigenous women. And when they speaking about Indigenous women, family, even though there's foundational Black Americans who are considered Indigenous women, there are Native Black Americans as well, but they're simply talking about your red, your white $5 Indian Indigenous women, in which they need. The only point I'm stating here is that this should be more of a broader spectrum that covers Black women as well, because our women become missing. Our women become murdered as well. We're part of that sex slave trafficking ring as well. But again, this is just for Indigenous women. Okay, that was passed in 2019. What about the Promise Act of 2020? That was passed. This aimed at supporting communities and businesses impacted by civil unrest following the George Floyd murder. So remember how there was civil unrest, there was looters, there were people destroying property, businesses were getting broken into. Yeah, there was a Promise Act that aimed at supporting businesses that was actually impacted by the George Floyd's murder. Not a bill of protection for Black folk, not a bill of protection for unarmed people, let alone the citizens of Minnesota, but simply helping out the businesses there who were impacted. Yeah, they need help too, but what about the people? Driver's license for all. I know this is going to ground some of you guys' gears right here. Driver's license for all. This happened in 2023. It was actually passed. This law allows illegal immigrants to obtain driver's license. Can I say that again? This law allows illegal immigrants to obtain driver's license. And what some of you are going to find out, and I'm not trying to fear monger anyone, I'm not trying to scare anyone. This may not be affecting anyone right now. This is mostly affecting Chicago, New York, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, those border states. And in some regards, I believe they've had the cartel to go up to, was it Idaho? There was one of these Midwestern states. But nonetheless, they are allowing illegal immigrants to obtain driver's license. And this was passed in Minnesota. So if an illegal immigrant wants a license, just go to Minnesota. Just go to Minnesota. And they probably already know that, family. But this is one of the laws that Tim Walz, that nobody knows. Okay, he's a very unpopular governor. And this was by design. This was by design because most people, even myself, I was really leaning towards Josh Shapiro. Okay, I was really leaning towards Josh Shapiro or Gavin Newsom. But I was really leaning towards Josh Shapiro. But there are some things about sexual harassment, allegedly sexual assault, allegedly with a woman. So again, when you're running on a campaign, you have a woman running as president and the possibility of reversing Roe versus Wade and or protecting women's maternal care, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You really don't want to have anyone on the ticket like Josh Shapiro. I know. And then Gavin Newsom is very controversial with all the laws he's passed with women and transgender and LGBTQ. There's people even on the liberal side, they're kind of like, I don't know. I don't know if this is really a good look that we should. So she went and found someone who is not in the spotlight, but who coincides and align with some of her policies. And we'll cover that as well. Increase funding, listen to this, increase funding for tribal nations. This was passed. Various budget allocations were made to support tribal health, education, and infrastructure. So what is that? They're giving more money to Native Americans. I'm not hating family. They deserve it, but we deserve just as much, okay? We deserve just as much because don't forget, prior to 1526, there were Black people already in what we know as America, United States of America today. So we were part of some of the original founding fathers, not of the country, but of the land. That's what we're talking about, okay? So don't get them contorted, don't get them conflicted, don't get them twisted. Next, the Police Accountability Act that was passed in 2020. It includes measures to improve police transparency and accountability. Yeah, we call that qualified immunity, where police officers pretty much get off a slap on the wrist unless they do something totally egregious and is caught on camera. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, "Now, well, Trump was trying to give them 100% immunity. They already have qualified immunity, family. They already have qualified immunity, which is the same thing as 100% immunity. You're thinking that a police officer is going to go out and kill an unarmed Black person, be videotaped, and they're going to get away scot-free. That's not going to happen. The same thing is going to happen. Okay, we need to be fighting for an anti-hate crime bill and essentially looking at stripping the immunity that they get from qualified immunity. Okay, not just getting a slap on the wrist, not just getting fired and you get hired the next county over. Okay, that police station. No. The Women's Economic Security Act of 2019, elements of WESA were incorporated into broader legislative efforts to address gender pay gaps and support working mothers. That's a good bill, right? That doesn't necessarily harm, but it affects working mothers. But what I'm getting at here, there's nothing so far that specifically targets the Black community to support them. Because as you can tell, when I had Chicago Red on, there are cities, there are states like Illinois and Chicago that illegal immigration is not only affecting in a negative manner, but is traumatizing the city financially. Okay, and guess who's at the end of that particular stick? Guess who's being harmed the most? The Black residents in Chicago. Not from me, but from those Chicagoans that are speaking out and crying out and going to all these rallies. They're going to all these meetings to tell Brandon Johnson, the mayor of Chicago, stop letting illegal immigrants come to Chicago and funding them. I know you guys seen there's been a video that's been going viral about a Venezuelan woman who left her receipt and she had a cash balance on her EBT card over $13,000. And she had a cash balance at $5,000. And this money is being received every month. And they're not citizens. They don't pay taxes. They haven't even joined the military. So they have not paid no just dues to get the benefits that Black people have been fighting and striving and lobbying and protesting and marching for goddamn the inception or the release or the sign of the Emancipation Proclamation. The COVID-19 response and recovery. Various emergency measures and relief packages were enacted throughout the pandemic, including vaccination campaigns. But of course, what about the Minnesota Clean Car Standard? That was passed. This legislation adopted California's auto emission standards to reduce greenhouse gases. So far, boring as hell. And that's why they wanted Tim Walz. And this is not even a battleground state, family. Minnesota is usually blue, okay, historically. One Minnesota budget. This was signed back in between 2019 and 2021. This budget increased funding for education, healthcare, and infrastructure. Okay, very basic, very bland bill. They have what they call a Walz-Flanagan budget. That was passed. The budget includes significant allocations for education, healthcare, and environmental protection. It seems like everything is very redundant. Everything is very repetitive. The education funding increase, this was passed. This increases were part of the broader state budget agreements. So everything is about the budget of Minnesota, the budget of Minnesota, the budget of Minnesota, or giving more money to Native Americans, giving programs for people who essentially don't deserve these programs on and or rights and licensing for illegal immigrants. What about this one? Now, I know a lot of people believe that this somehow indirectly or directly helps Black Americans, which it doesn't. This is help you to smoke weed. The legalization of adult use cannabis. This got passed last year. Minnesota legalized recreational marijuana, including provisions for expunging past cannabis-related convictions. Here's the thing, family. White people smoke weed, Hispanic people smoke weed, Black people smoke weed, and if you look close enough, Asian people smoke weed. So this helps nobody. This helps nobody. And guess what it says? Including provisions for expunging past cannabis-related convictions. Where are those numbers? Where are those numbers, Tim? Public safety and police reform. That was passed. This was about various measures to enhance public safety and police accountability were enacted. Mental health initiatives. This was also passed. This expanded funding and support for mental health services were included in state budgets. And a lot of times when you read these things that Foundational Black Americans absolutely need, like a mental health initiative, there's a lot about people, unfortunately, because of the turmoil and trauma and the things that we've occurred in this country, that a lot of us are suffering from mental health issues, that you would think programs like this would benefit us. But when you look at certain places like New York City and California, majority of the homeless population are Black Americans. And this is not by their non-action or their actions. Some of them landed homelessness on their own, but a majority of them, family, this was designed. Renewable energy initiatives. This was also passed. Minnesota took several initiatives to promote renewable energy sources, and that was enacted to contribute to the state's sustainability goals. So, I mean, he has a very bleak, bland, boring legislative policies that really hasn't significantly changed the lives of Black Americans in the state. So, because the question is here, family, why should you vote for Tim Walz? Because if you vote for Kamala Harris, you're voting for Tim Walz. And if you're voting for Tim Walz, you're voting for Kamala Harris. So far, we haven't seen any significant legislation from Kamala Harris. Again, we're going to table identity politics. We're just going to table the fact whether she's 25% white Irish and 75% South Indian. We're going to table that. We're going to table if her father identifies as a Black Jamaican or he was just Jamaican nationality, because we know we have other races in Jamaica who are Jamaicans, like Asian Jamaicans. We've seen that where their nationality is Jamaican, but their race is Asian. We've seen that. But we're going to table all of the identity politics because that can get so convoluted, that can get really messy. And people talking about, well, she's always identified as Black because she went to a HBCU and she's an AKA. Well, let me tell you this, family. My son graduated from an HBCU. And when I went to the graduation, there were non-Black people graduating. There were white people, Asian people, and there was a lot of Hispanic people, okay? And believe me, in the Divine Nine, which makes up sororities and fraternities, Family, there are all sorts of people inside of these sororities and fraternities, white, Hispanic, Asians, and otherwise. So we can't get caught up in this identity politics because that is what they will try to drive home. Okay. That's what they would try to drive home because a lot of this legislation, what they're going to try to do is like, you know what? Tim Walz police accountability and reform bill, they're going to state how this bill will address systematic issues in policing that disproportionately affect Black communities. Have you noticed the word disproportionately? Like, here's a steak, but I'm just going to give you the fat, meaning that you're really not going to receive any protections. You're not going to receive any deep dives and investigations of police brutality that they have essentially targeted Black folk to be harmed. You're not going to receive that level of transparency, but they're going to chop it up as if. They're going to state by banning chokeholds and requiring de-escalation training and increase police accountability that the legislation aims to reduce incidents of police violence and build trust between law enforcement and Black communities, which we know is an absolute farce. It's fake. It's a fraud. This is the new terminology of capping. They're lying their ass off. They're going to state that the Promise Act, okay, which focused on rebuilding businesses and communities affected by the civil unrest during the whole George Floyd murder, given that many of the hardest hit areas were predominantly Black neighborhoods, this act provided crucial financial support and resources to help these communities recover and rebuild. How did you do that? Did you go in and rebuild the hood? Did you go in, provide jobs for those people who were out of work, maybe because of those buildings getting destroyed? And I know there are going to be some white supremacists that are going to come out where they destroy their own neighborhoods. They destroy their own businesses. Well, we know that Antifa and other groups were out there planting things and covering themselves up where you couldn't see their skin color and destroying the Black community and then pointing the finger at Black Americans. Absolutely. We're not falling for it, family. We're not falling for it. And here's the kicker, too. Here's a good one. What about that driver's license for all, right? While that legislation benefits illegal immigrants, they're going to kind of blend it as it has a positive impact on the Black immigrants from Africa and Caribbean nations, improving their ability. Now, we know we have some of our long distance cousins from those areas as well as Haiti. But here's the thing, family, the underminement as an American citizen, as a foundation Black American, as an American citizen, you have to go in and be a citizen and sign up for your driver's license or your non-driver's license, your social security number, your date of birth. You have to have all this documentation just to drive your vehicle in this country, and they're giving it away. They don't need none of that. You can just say that you are Hector Gomez and you're here to get a license. And I can go on and on and on, even about the increased funding for the tribal nations legislation. All right, because though primarily benefiting those indigenous communities, the increased focus, okay, this is how they're going to say it probably, on minority group funding and support since a president that can be leveraged for advocates for similar investments in Black communities. Somehow by increased funding and giving money to tribal nations, somehow that money is going to trickle or convince or influence the state of Minnesota to support the Black community with similar investments, which we have not seen. We haven't seen this, family. We haven't seen anything from Tim Walz. We haven't seen anything from Kamala Harris that has benefited the Black community. And, you know, she's already told us what she's going to do for the Black community. That's what I'm getting at. Because when we do a compare and contrast, between Tim Walz and Kamala Harris, policies, legislations, bills that was essentially enacted, guess what? Police and criminal justice reform. As I stated before, Walz enacted the Police Accountability and Reform Bill in 2020. Okay. And somehow they chopped this up as to be to address racial disparities in law enforcement. How is it still to this day we have innocent, unarmed black black men and women still getting murdered by the race soldiers with badges? And we have to understand that Harris supported the Justice for Victims of Lynching Act, okay, the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act. And when you just say the title of those things, you're like, oh, that got passed? Yeah, the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act got passed. But my question for you, family, is how did that affect, how did that protect, how did that benefit Black Americans? I'll wait. How did the Safe Justice Act help? How the Profiling Act helped? None of these legislation has done anything to protect Black Americans. It has not. What about the economic support and equity? We understand that Walz, he passed the Promise Act that, quote unquote, supposedly to support minority-owned businesses. And when they mean minorities, they don't mean Black folk. Ask some of your Black brothers and sisters how the Promise Act helped them in Minnesota. And then Harris, she introduced the LIFT Act. If you guys are familiar with that, the Livable Incomes for Families today, that's the name of the act, that was supposedly to help the middle class, to provide tax credits for low and middle income families that were disproportionately benefit Black people and Latinos. But of course, that did not get passed. And when we refer to things to health and social services, okay, health and social services, Walz increased funding for mental health initiatives. We covered that. And then Harris introduced the Maternal Care Act to address racial disparities in maternal health and co-sponsor improving data collection for advanced childhood experiences. And what a lot of people are not understanding, and they're not really talking about it, and there's people who most likely don't live in border states, people who do not live in Chicago, people who do not live in New York, people who do not live in states that are being affected by the illicit drug trade and drug trafficking, okay, of opioids, methamphetamines, and fentanyl. That's coming through by the way of the cartels. They don't live in these cities. They don't live in these states. They're just speaking it from an emotional trauma standpoint, from an emotional trauma platform, trying to push people to vote for Kamala Harris because they are saying that she's Black. You guys remember when Van Jones got on TV and talking about that? Oh, they're talking about Kamala Harris. They're gonna be surprised when Black men come out and support Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris is a whole vice president of these United States of America. Kamala Harris is the second most powerful person in the world. You think she needs protection from us? And I know I was going to leave identity politics out of it, family. I was going to leave it out, but I got to just say this. And I know it doesn't matter. I want people to hear me where I know it doesn't matter. I'm not getting on my Dr. Umar Johnson train, okay? But why would Black men come out and protect Kamala Harris and she has a whole white husband? Why would Black men come out and protect Kamala Harris and, for the sake of argument, she's 50% South Indian? Why would we come out and protect Kamala Harris off people on the internet? This turn off the internet. This turn off social media. That's all the protection that she will ever need. She got the most powerful force behind her. She got the U.S. Military and all of those branches. She got the CIA. She got the NSA. She got Homeland Security. She got Secret Service. She got the FBI. Believe me, Kamala Harris just fine, family. So stop thinking because people are speaking on the internet about their personal views and doing a comprehensive breakdown on things that the most powerful woman in the world needs protection from Black men. Come on. We need protection from this country. The support for immigrant communities. Okay. And this is the whole open door policy. And people are like, there's no open door policies. There are. Listen, anytime you're a governor like Tim Walz and you pass a driver's license for all act, allowing illegal immigrants to obtain driver's license, that is incentivizing, that is encouraging for people to illegally enter the country. And guess what? Kamala Harris, she is the one that supported broader immigration reforms and policies aimed at protecting immigrant communities. She's the one who's done this. She's the one who's done this. Then some people, again, I'm trying to combat, I'm trying to refute every single argument somebody's going to have about Tim Walz. I'm trying to do the same thing for Kamala Harris because Walz passed laws to supposedly enhance public safety and police reform, indirectly addressing hate crimes indirectly. And then Harris, she co-sponsored the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act and supported the Domestic Terrorism Prevention Act. But we all know about the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act. They only named one group of people. They named Asian Americans. They didn't name white Americans. They didn't name brown Americans. They didn't name Hispanic Americans. They didn't name black Americans. They named Asian Americans. See, what they do is they understand that people love headlines, family. Let me point this out for you. Let me just pop this up for you so you guys understand what I'm referring to. Let me point this out for you, family, because a lot of you may not be familiar with this legislation. This is the legislation in which I'm referring to, COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act, right? We understand that it became law. You see that it became law here, right? Let's look at this. Where do you see? You see Asian, because remember when Kamala Harris told Black Americans she cannot do nothing specifically for Black Americans, that whatever she do for Black Americans, she would do for everyone else. But she was a part of this COVID-19 Anti-Hate Crimes Act that specifically was for Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. It was for no other group. It was for no other group. Just look at it, family. Asian Americans, anti-Asian discrimination. What else do we have? Anti-Asian Pacific Islanders, Asian Americans, Asian Americans. It says nothing about any other group. So this is legislation on the federal level to protect Asian Americans. I'm not hating, but where's the Black anti-hate crime bill? That's the question. That's the question, family. Because when you dive into the details and you dive into the policies, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz does not have any policies to protect, to support, and to benefit Black Americans who are citizens of this nation, who are descendants of slaves. There's none. So when people are getting to this identity politics and they're like, oh, well, she had Meg Thee Stallion and she had the family. They're using symbolic gestures, they're using cosplaying, and they're being quite disrespectful. They understand that and they start using this term, the low information crowd. I'm gonna call them the low brow crowd, where they're going to be excited to go out and vote because Kamala Harris had Meg Thee Stallion on stage. Kamala Harris had Quavo on stage. This is the problem, family. Just because she put on some Chuck Taylors, just because she put on some Timberlands, just because she washed her greens in the tub, which is totally gross, absolutely nasty. Never heard of that in my entire life. Never heard of that my entire life. And then a lot of people are not understanding, and I played this on my broadcast the other, I believe it was 2 broadcasts ago. Please forgive me, family. But Kamala Harris was stating that her South Indian mother raised her and her sister as 2 Black girls. How? That's like, okay, let me put it in perspective for you. you was raised by a white mom, and she said, yeah, I raised my two black girls. I raised my two daughters as two black girls. How can a white woman raise their children as black girls? What if she was Hispanic? You get what I'm see? Her mother was not born in America. I could probably understand a little bit. You know, her mother was born in America. She grew up in a black neighborhood. She was around black people. No, her mother didn't come over here until she attended college. And then don't forget, Kamala Harris grew up in Canada. Yeah, there's black people in Canada, but she make it seem as though she's a foundational black American because they will always pull out that she went to a HBCU and she joined the AKA. She's a part of the AKA the Boule. But nonetheless, family, how does that make you have a black experience? How does that make you black? Again, I'm not getting into identity politics, but I really wanted to point those things out. They keep giving you these weak arguments and they're trying to distract you. They're trying to distract you to vote for someone that doesn't have any policies that is going to impact your life. Now, granted, there's going to be some sisters who are going to vote because they believe that she's going to reverse Roe versus Wade, that she's going to implement laws for maternal care. But when I have sisters online tell me they're going to vote for Donald Trump, for border security, for all these other incentives business-wise, I can totally understand. Let me try to find that clip about the Venezuelan lady, Venezuela, I can't even say Venezuelan, lady who had, okay, they had that large amount on her receipt. Let me look at that. Give me 1 second. I don't know if you guys seen that or not, but I really want to point that out. Okay, I believe that this lady here pointed this out first.
And I found a very interesting picture. And I was scrolling on X this morning and I found a very interesting picture. And in the description, it said that it was a Venezuelan immigrant who was at a New York bodega that had left her receipt behind, right? And so when you use EBT, basically it will give you a balance and a cash balance after you use the card. And I guess what shocked me the most was the amount that this woman or this person had in their account. $13,401.82. And as a cash balance, they have $4,498.85. And then I thought, this isn't what immigrants are getting. I mean, I've heard a lot of people say that we're giving immigrants $13,000 a month, but until I saw this receipt, I wasn't really sure until now. I would love to know your comments on this. I find it very interesting. I look forward to seeing them. I hope you all have a great day.
No, we don't find it very interesting. We find very infuriating because we've been fighting for probably half that for more than a century. But they come over here illegally, and nothing against the people, okay? Because these are legislations that have been passed by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and now that Kamala Harris is running for president, Tim Walz, because Tim Walz passed legislation just last year for driver's licensing for all that incentivize more people to come to the country illegally. And if you do not believe it undermines black folk, family, listen to me. And I'm not trying to fearmonger anyone. I'm not trying to use any scare tactics for you not to vote. If you want to vote for Kamala girl, you want to vote for Tim Walton down the street, go ahead and do what you do. I'm just giving you the information. These are facts that are going on. And I want to see if I can just get to a point where she moved her head here. Let me see where you can see the amount for yourself. This is the real receipt. Okay, because some people think that this may be clickbait. Let me see if I can. Right here, look up here, family. The balance on here for an EBT is $13,400 $1.82, and then the cash balance is $4,498.85. These people are coming over here and being rich, but they would tell Foundation of Black Americans, we don't have enough money for reparations. You don't? So tell me, let's just do the math. There was around 17,000. Let's round up to $18,000. So that's $18,000 that they're receiving a month. I'm just gonna go off with the numbers we have. $18,000 a month. Family, what would you be doing with $18,000 a month? I know some of you are going on vacation. Some of you are going to be a business. Some of you are going to squander it away. Some of you are going to get, well, people don't really buy rims no more, but somebody going to buy some damn rims. People are going to be doing all sorts of money, but here's the point. You are a citizen. You out here trying to grind and get your bag up, where these people, the only thing they had to do was go across a little river, sneak through a fence, and bam, $18,000. And family, I'm very surprised they have not received free cars yet. Look for illegal immigrants to start receiving free vehicles. They're going to be some states, some cities is going to give illegal immigrants free vehicle vouchers. Yeah, they are. They're going to give them free vehicle vouchers. They're going to be riding around here in Lambos. No, I'm kidding. Ferraris. No, mostly they're going to be riding around here in Honda Civics and Honda Accords, okay? But nonetheless, wait, I'm trying to tell you, family, they're going to give them cars. They give them driver's license. They're giving them luxury apartments. They give them housing. They're giving them $18,000 a month. And here's the thing that is a huge, huge problem. We have majority of the homelessness in America is from the Black American family. We have a lot of our brothers and sisters on the streets, but we're giving $18,000 to people who are illegally in the country. We have veterans who are on the street. We have veterans who are not receiving their just due, but we can give people illegally in the country who, when they come here, not all, but when they come here, they have anti-Black sentiments of the white imperial racial tropes that they say to our people. There's been a lot of incidents in Chicago, family. There have been a lot of incidents in New York, mainly. And if you think this is not going to spill over to your city and or state, I don't know what to say. And again, I'm not telling you to vote for Donald Trump. I'm not telling you to vote for J.D. Vance. I'm not telling you to vote for Kamala Harris, and I'm not telling you to vote for Tim Walz. But you already know what I'm going to do, because if there's nothing on the table for me to eat, then why would I come to dinner? Why would I come to dinner? Somalia Against Pan-Africanism says, Tim Walz, let me get rid of this. Tim Walz is the do boy of the so-called community. He was aware of the welfare fraud, but turned the blind eye. Elizabeth White says that Tim Walz is bad for Blacks. He's bad for America. I just posted some of the things you're talking about on Facebook page. Getting driver's license will allow illegals to vote. Absolutely. A lot of people, because this whole ID thing, like, again, everything that one political party is trying to do to prevent illegal immigrants from voting, guess what the other political party is doing? Enacting things so they can vote. Oh, you know what? Black people, the Republicans, they're requiring you to have an ID to vote. That is disproportionately going to affect Black people. No, the hell it's not. Black Americans, we have IDs. We have driver's license, non-driver's license. We got all types of cards with picture IDs. We have identification. So Tim Walz said, you know what? They want people to have IDs. Then guess what? Come to Minnesota. I give all illegal immigrants an ID. This is the truth, family. This is not satire. This is not clickbait. This is the truth. Tim Walz passed a bill last year allowing illegal immigrants to come get a driver's license, an ID card from Minnesota. I see my good brother, Jermaine Anderson. Thank you for moderating, sir. Appreciate your support. Following the logic states that Walz passed a law in Minnesota last year that includes language requiring menstrual products to be available in bathrooms for all schools for grades 4 to 12 as a way to accommodate transgender students. Family, I'm going to take his word for it. I'm going to take Following the Logic's word for it. I just did a brief summary of Tim Walz. If you guys are just tuning in, please rewind the tape and listen in, because I went over the policies, okay? We're not talking about identity politics. We're not talking about fear tactics. We're not talking about people going to concerts where Cuervo and Meg Thee Stallion are there. We're not doing a big cookout. We're not serving soul food. We're not doing the electric slide. We're not going to cookouts to get your vote. We're talking about policies. We're talking about legislations. We're talking about bills. And family, let me tell you this. Tim Walz and Kamala Harris do not have bills, do not have legislation, does not have policies that is going to specifically support, protect, and benefit foundational Black American, and neither does Donald Trump.